Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to week 5 of our stitch along for 2024. Before I get into that, I just wanted to say a huge thank you from the heart for everybody who's subscribed to my videos. I have just reached 25,000 subscribers. I literally can't believe it. It's just amazing. So thank you so much for your response and welcoming me into YouTube land and appreciating what I do. Truly, it means so much to me. So thank you very much. This week, the theme of our slow stitch is going to be based around English paper piecing, which is something that I've seen many people use already in their week 3 piece, which was about the traditional textile cultures that had, you know, inspired you on your textile journey. And it was my first love as well. I don't have some of those probably horrible cushions that I made when I was a little child anymore. I know in the beginning I started with scraps that my mother, who made a lot of our clothes for her and myself, she would give me the scraps and I used to just sew them together. I suppose what I was doing was crumb quilting or crazy quilting, because I just sewed them together, you know, basically as they were. And then at one point I discovered English paper piecing and just, you know, did that, and I did that for many years. I've got one here on the desk to show you. I'm going to do a little bit of handheld in a minute to show you the detail of it. But also I've got a little piece here. It's a tiny little piece that featured in my studio tour. I hope you can see it. If I hold it over my face then you should be able to see it. And that was 1/2 inch hexagons. And you know, that's as big as it got at that point. So we're going to do something based on that, but I'm going to talk a little bit more when I'm at my desk about the history of it and the meaning behind it, and you know, what and how and when, and put some kind of meaning into the pieces that we make rather than just doing EPP for the sake of doing EPP. Nothing wrong with that, but you know, I like to have a little story behind it as well. So I'll get into that. Oh, before, yeah, I put it here so I didn't forget, and I nearly did. I did an eyelet stitch video last week as part of the Slow Stitches series, and I mentioned somewhere in the comments, I think, or it might have been in the Facebook group, that I'd had a scroll on the go with eyelets in, and a lady asked to see it. So I don't know if it's clear here. If I look in a minute and it's not clear, I'll show it again under the you know, when I'm at my desk. But the lovely thing about putting eyelets in a scroll is when that's then wound, the eyelets, oh sorry, I can't see, I have to look over my glasses. The eyelets act as little windows as to what's underneath. Yeah, it'll show up better under my desk. I'll show you quickly when I go and sit down. Okay, enough wittering. So I'm going to stop this now and put my glasses back where they belong. Okay, this is my daughter's quilt that I English paper pieced for her when she was just over 2, when she went into a big girl's bed, basically. So it's all done by hand, pieced and quilted, and I've got it folded back here so you can see. Oh, excuse me. A quilt for Lily, made with love by her mummy, November 2006. And it was diamonds, so it was diamond stars. And then I think the quilting shows up. So then I quilted little flowers, sorry, in the white squares in the middle, and then on the little gingham check I did little hearts. Okay, before I get into making what we're going to make, I just wanted to share a little bit of this book with you. There was an exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum in 2010 of quilts from their own collections and quilts that, you know, were loaned from other collections, and this was the book that accompanied the exhibition, and it's a wonderful book. I've marked a few places just to show you. It's called Quilts 1700 to 2010, Hidden Histories, Untold Stories. Edited by Sue Pritchard, published by the V&A. I used to work for the V&A actually in the early 90s. Just as an aside, the first thing I wanted to, I don't know if you can read it, was this quote. It's from The Mill on the Floss, which is a novel by George Eliot, one of my favourite novels. The heroine, Maggie, was a role model for me when I was growing up. But anyway, here she's being made to do some patchwork as a present for an aunt, and she says, "It's foolish work," said Maggie with a toss of her mane. "Tearing things to pieces to sew them together again, and I don't want to do anything for my Aunt Glegg. I don't like her." What else have I marked? Oh yes, I also marked this beautiful thing because it reminded me of the Stitch Meditation Scrolls. Can you see that? And it is a strip of patchwork made from pieces of woven silk and printed cotton or linen, and embroidered with a heart and cut in half. And it was found with a baby that was left at on hospital steps as an identifying token at the London Foundling Hospital on the 11th of February in 1767, and it says by a mother who was almost certainly poor. I just found that so moving and touching. I think that's just a beautiful thing. And it says male child named Charles. So that's lovely. It's very sad. I hope Charles had a good life. Here I just wanted to show this quickly as well, because we had some chat in the private Facebook group about men, and in the comments here as well, about men making patchwork. And this is Private Roberts with this rather fine moustache and his patchwork quilt, which was published in the British Workman in March 1873. So that's him, Private Roberts. And here, now we're getting into the real theme of this week. Here is a picture of a quilt from the V&A collection from the 19th century, showing in the back of it the papers still left in. And the papers were often left in as extra warmth because these English paper pieced quilts were not, they didn't have wadding or batting in or whatever. They were often, excuse me, just a single layer. But the side sort of advantage of that for us now is that the papers that we used were recycled papers. So this looks like some kind of price list, 3.5 old pence per something yard and so on. But there'd be letters and, other documents, and they're a real archive of social history as well. I've got one more here, look, and here again, this is another piece with the papers still left in. And here are some little loose hexagon templates for an unfinished bed cover that have been found, and these are also in the V&A collection. And you see the different bits of handwriting on them. I just think they're beautiful things. So that is that book there. I will also put a link down there to a little curator's talk from the the Quilters Guild of the British Isles. In their collections they have the oldest dated English paper pieced quilt, saying that right, which is from 1718 and is known just as the coverlet or the silk coverlet. So there's a little link down below to a little 5-minute talk by a curator about that and their collections. Also, just note, she's an English woman. She's got a very sweet voice, and she uses the word applique, so look out for that. So that's that. So now I'm going to get my other bits and bobs out, and we'll start the actual making. Okay, here's the eyelet scroll quickly, just to show you what I was talking about, because it didn't show up very well from me holding it up. This I made in an online workshop with a lady called Gwen Headley. It was printing on cloth, mark making on cloth, and she used acrylic and fabric paints, but I used inks from my natural dyes. So there's an eyelet there, that's what I was talking about. Do you see there's a little eyelet, and then you have a little peep underneath of the stitching underneath. So yeah, it's a lovely way to use eyelet stitch in your scroll. So before I show you how to make this week's, this is a video on how to procrastinate. I just wanted to quickly show you my last week's, because I was very rude about it in the video, which was very naughty of me, poor little piece. And a lot of you have commented on it and said you liked it and said it looked like a beach or weathered boards from a boat or various other things that people saw in it, and it really made me look at it again, and so I decided to do some more stitching in it. So I took it off the page and I did some pink stitching to sort of bring more pink into it, because I had this one lonely little bit of pink. So I did pink stitching going all that way, and then the other way I used this naturally dyed wool, which is a greeny. It was the closest I had to the teal. It's a much lighter tone, but anyway, and now I really like it. I would go so far as to say I love it. So there was, I used this naturally dyed wool, which is a greeny. It was the closest I had to the teal. It's a much lighter tone, but anyway, and now I really like it. I would go so far as to say I love it. So there was, I used this naturally dyed wool, which is a greeny. It was the closest I had to the teal. It's a much lighter tone, but anyway, and now I really like it. I would go so far as to say I love it. So there was a learning thing for myself, you know, that don't discard it, dismiss it as ugly. Maybe it just needs a little bit more love and attention and it will grow. Someone made the analogy of the story of the ugly duckling turning into a swan. So I'll just put my journal away now for a minute and actually get on with week 5. So I've shown you the book, and I've neglected to mention that this will be the subtitle of the book will be the theme, so Hidden Histories, Untold Stories. Let's just get myself a bit more room. So in the light of that, what I've done is, and I've pre-prepared, I've got myself a little, this is just a scrap of paper that's tea-dyed, but it could be any kind of paper. It needs to be, you're going to make the templates from it, so it needs to be sturdy-ish, but not too thick because you have to sew through it. So sketchbook paper. Regular copy paper would probably be okay if it wasn't too flimsy, because you know you need an edge to stitch against. So what I've done is I've worked out with the little hexagon templates. Oh, I need to tell you about those. I'll tell you about those in a minute, how to make the templates, and there's some links if you don't have them. I've chosen hexagons with a 3/4 inch side to them, because then when I'm going to put 7 together, and that'll just fit nicely on my 5 by 7 inch page. But if you want to make bigger or smaller hexagons, you know, to accommodate your project, then of course you can. So what I've then done is I've worked out a piece of paper out of which I can cut 7, and torn my piece of paper to the right size, and then on there I've written, you can write, you know, anything you like. It could be a poem, or you could write your own words or whatever, but I've written the poem I Worried by Mary Oliver, which is just a poem I love, and it really, you know, really resonates with me, and I need to take into account what it says. If you don't know it, just Google I Worried by Mary Oliver and it'll come up. So I've written it on there in pencil, just, you know, in my own handwriting. And I've endeavoured to cover the whole paper more or less with words. So that's clear. Okay, so now the templates. I'll go back, rewind. So if you don't have, you can buy pre-made. I've had those for years. You see, they're full of little holes. They're what I used to make that little piece I showed you. You can buy pre-made hexagon templates in various sizes. If you happen to have those, you could take one of those and make yourself a cardboard template, trace round it, and then use that, you know, to cut your templates out of your special bit of paper, if that makes sense. Alternatively, if you've got a pair of compasses, you know, the things for drawing circles, there's a way to draw a hexagon doing that, and I'll link to a tutorial. And if you don't have a set of compasses or a template or anything like that, you can print them out online. There are free printables, so you could print some out, and I'll put a link for that. But the way I did it, which is kind of, maybe, I don't know how they did it in the olden times before they had printables and things. I did it just with a pencil and a ruler. And I'll link to the tutorial to that, how I did it. And that's literally just drawing some lines a certain distance apart and connecting the lines to give you the angles. Oh, there's another way. If you have a quilter's ruler with a 60-degree line on, you can also make hexagons doing that. So, you know, one way or another, by hook or by crook, get yourself a little hexagon template out of cardboard. If you look on the back, you'll see the lines that I drew as per the tutorial that I'm going to link to get my hexagon. And you need to use a very fine pencil, be as accurate as possible with your drawing and your cutting, and then just check that all your side lengths are the same so that they all fit together nicely. Now, if the idea of hexagons makes you go, oh no, I don't want to do that, just do little squares, do a 9 patch, just do exactly the same thing, and just make yourself little square templates and do them, you know, 3 by 3 to make 9. Okay, so I have I wrote the poem on there. This was the same thing, but I've cut them out already. You don't want to watch me cutting out forever. So now on each little template, I've got some of the words, but all, you know, higgledy-piggledy. But here and there things jump out, you know, to sing even the sparrows. That's part of the poem, obviously. So this kind of imitates those papers I showed you in the book and the quilts with them left in. And of course I'm going to leave these in my piece. So all I'm going to do now is, I've got some fabrics, cloths pre-selected. I'm going to talk briefly about selecting, because last year, was it a year ago? No, last week we did choices, and this week I've chosen carefully and deliberately, and taken not a long time, but I've chosen, I want to get that sort of old-fashioned look. Now these are all, with the exception of that tea dyed. There is already part 1 of a tea dyeing video, so I thought I'm allowed to use my tea dye cloths, because part 1 is up, which tells you how to do it. I haven't yet shown, part 2 won't be up yet, but you know. Anyway, so you could of course use any kind of things you like, but I want it to all look old-fashioned. Old. If you're auditioning fabrics to see if they go together, it's a good idea to get the sort of the same amount of each one showing. You know, so if you imagine you've got a great big meter, excuse me, a great big meter piece of one, and you want to see if that goes with it. So imagine you've got a great big piece here of one fabric and you hold that against it. You're not getting a balance of, unless you're going to use a great big lump of that and a tiny piece of that. But if you're using the same amount of everything, try and put them with the same amount of everything showing. And so then if you peep in like that, you get a much better idea of how they're all going to go together. That's just a little tip. So anyway, I've pre-selected my 7 little scraps of various sizes. This red one here I'm going to cut as much as I can into the beige, because I don't really want the bright red. How's the back? I could use the back even. I'll see. I'll decide when I've cut it out. So then I use my actual template to cut my patches out, because I don't want to. Well, on the other hand, if you mess those up, they'll just look more old, won't they? Sorry, I seem to be all over the place this morning. Anyway, we'll go on. So I just lay it on, and if you're being careful about wasting fabric, you want to go, you know, as close to an edge so you leave quite a usable lump, and you need a little bit that you're going to fold around your template and stitch down. I'm doing this as if it's for people who've never done English paper piecing before. So if you have, you know, just kind of switch off for a minute. So I like to turn over on a hexagon this size a good 1/4 inch. What's that? 7 or 8 millimeters, something like that. But you need enough to be able to turn over, but you don't want to be turning over great big lumps, because we're going to want the template to show through afterwards, so you can read the words. So just something in the region of that. Okay, a good 1/4 inch is the very long-winded way of saying it. So then I just hold that with my thumb and get my sharp scissors and just cut. It's just cutting out. I'm going to cut straight up there because I don't think that odd-shaped pieces would be any good at all. And same thing, just going to cut a straight piece off, because I know I use those little bits in my collage. So rather than have a hexagon shaped hole in a bit, I'd much rather have these little triangles. That's just me. There we go. So there's one. Put little scraps over there. A bit of this. And when it's a print like this, you can do what's called fussy cutting. I in general don't go fussy cutting like this, you know, in a great big piece of cloth, because it's wasteful. Well, I suppose it's not if you're going to use the scraps, but and of course you can cut with it right side up, so you can see where you're cutting, because you can flip it over. I'm just going to go here in the corner. They would have used all kinds of scraps. Well, it kind of varied between classes actually, because quite a lot earlier than you might think, there was new cloth coming in, and the sort of more wealthier people started doing patchwork as a hobby, you know. So it wasn't only the make, do and mend. That obviously happened as well. And I know in the States there was feed sacks were specially printed for women to use, and men to use in their patchwork and things like that. But this one, I'm going to go in this corner where it's a bit more variable for this tiny little thing. Well, it's not that tiny. When I bought those, that little pack of templates, I bought them years ago in a shop in Holland. It was there with my husband, who's Dutch, and there was a shop in this little town selling, you know, cloth and quilty things. And I had a look, but I already wasn't buying new cloth or anything like that. But I'd had a look and I'd had a chat with the lady who owned the shop, and I wanted to buy something, you know, just to buy something. So I saw those hanging, and I'd never done anything that small, 1/2 inch across. And I picked them up and I said, oh, these are interesting. And I said, mind you, you'd have to be crazy to make a bed quilt using these. And she said, I am making a king-size quilt at this moment. So I was a bit embarrassed. So I bought 2 packets. But then I was telling that story in England when I used to do talks to quilt groups and guilds and so on about my little hexagon embarrassment. And a lady in the audience put her hand up and said, I'm doing 1/4 inch hexagons in a quilt. So I've never heard of smaller than that. If you have, you know where to tell it. I don't know how you'd make smaller than a 1/4 inch, but still. It's this also, if there's not someone whittering on in your ear, if you're doing this quietly on your own, is a lovely thing as well. I don't know what it is about it. And because you know when you're doing it that this is for hundreds of years people have been doing this. Because you can also these days buy die-cutty things to make it. And, you know, if you've got those, you use them. But to me, I just like the idea that I'm sitting here with a bit of cloth, a bit of cardboard, and a pair of scissors. And cutting out little hexies. This is a last piece, I think, of a lovely cloth. It was a neighbour of mine when I lived in England. Came knocking on my door. I'd not lived there for very long. And said, oh, are you Catherine? Someone's told me that you're a stitcher. And I said, yes, I am, and invited her in and made her a cup of tea and all that. And she said, I'm going to go into my attic. I've got a whole load of things that belong to my mum, who was an embroiderer and stitcher. Would you like it? She said, I've been looking for a home for it for years. So I said, yes, of course, I'd love it, thank you very much. And she went back and she came and there was loads of stuff, but this little cloth was in there. So that's a memory of that lady and her lovely mum. Whoops. You don't have to be that even, you know. I just, sometimes the quilter in me comes out, and but again, it's still in the slow stitch ethos to be like that if it makes you happy. And that was a little bit what last week was about. It was because some people responded to that challenge with gusto, as they say. Where am I going to go here? Because I want some flower on it, some flowers. I think I'm going to go there. and loved it, you know, and really embraced it and really enjoyed it. And other people found it quite stressful. And I'm sorry if you found it quite stressful. My intention was not to stress you out. But at the same time, I did read many comments from people who said they found it stressful, but they'd learned something, you know, that they felt was valuable. So that was good. That was good. And the last one is this great big lump, which tea-dyed very blotchy. And as a piece, it's not that attractive. But when you cut little bits out of it, I'm going to go up here where it's a bit more quiet. When you cut little bits out of it, it's really nice. Well, I think so, you know, if you like that sort of thing. I hope you can see okay, because I've moved the camera stand back up slightly. I had moved it down because I was getting some comments from people, especially in the stitching videos, saying they couldn't see what I was doing clearly enough. And so I moved it down, excuse me, I moved it down a bit. But then what happened was it kept refocusing, you know, so some of it was blurry. So I've moved it slightly back up. I'm still on I'm still new to this. That's why I'm so overwhelmed with the 25,000 thing. I think it was halfway November that, I mean, there are a couple of journal flip-throughs on my channel that have been there for a year or so, my Auntie Lily's book and my Granny's book, but I hadn't been doing these sort of more tutorial type videos until I think it was mid-November, and we're now nearly the end of January. It's just, I can't compute. And I didn't really think anything of it until people started saying how unusual it was. I just thought maybe that's just what happened on YouTube. Okay, so, sorry. I'm going to get, that's a teeny needle. I'm going to get a slightly bigger needle. And I don't want a great big fat needle because I don't want to make great big holes in my papers. And I'm going to baste them, but the basting is going to stay in because, you know, I want to keep the papers in. So I'm going to use this, and this is also a vintage cotton. It's a machine sewing Silco. But it's a neutral, you know, so that, because it's going to stay in. But again, if you think it's nice, if you're going for a different colour palette, you know, a more modern look or whatever, and you think that the basting stitches will, you know, be a feature of it, then you do you. It's running away from me. So I'm going to baste these to the papers. And this is quite a long process. I'm looking at the time there, I see it's already 18 minutes, and there's also all the talking about the book and all that. And then if it starts getting way over an hour, I might do some editing. And I know everybody says we don't mind, we can fast forward. If it's too much, we can stop and, you know, go away and have a walk and come back and all that. But my issue still is that I have very slow internet. And so upload speed is an issue. Right, so I've made a knot. I folded one side over, snug against the paper, and just finger pressed it. And then I'm going to just fold this other side over, I hope you can see what I'm doing, to make a little corner, and hold it with my thumbnail. And then I'm going to go through those folds in the corner. And there my knot is locked. And then, because I'm right-handed, I'm going to go anti-clockwise. So then I'm going to come up, because it's only a 3/4 inch side, I think I'm going to come up halfway the side, ish, to my next corner. And then, so you sort of get your thumbnail there, and then push that one over. And then go down through all the folds again to the back. And this is the very epitome of a portable project if you wanted to do a bigger piece of these, because you can just cut yourself a few templates and a few scraps of cloth, throw them into your Japanese rice bag, stick yourself a needle in your little biscornu pincushion, which are taking over the world, apparently, those little biscornu. I think they reproduce like gremlins, if you remember that film, you know, where they all start popping out of the big gremlin or the little gremlins. Now there I'm a bit neat, but I don't care, I'm just going to manage. Yeah, the biscornu pincushions. Which, if you don't know what I'm talking about, in the tutorials playlist you'll find a video. But yeah, this is lovely to. I've sat on beaches doing these. I've sat in woods. I've, you know, sat on trains, in cars. You can really make them everywhere, anywhere and everywhere. So I'm just coming up somewhere halfway the seam allowance, and just working my way around. And there I'm back to the last corner. And up, and then when I come to where I started, I go down and up again. Whoops, I can get a knot. That's not helpful. And normally I would just leave that, and I think I'm going to do a tiny back stitch because it's staying in. If I was going to take the papers out afterwards, I would have just left that like that, but I'm just going to do one little back stitch. Oops. So there's my first one. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing to the other 6. Make a knot. Choose my next one. My next bit of paper. Oh, that says Mary Oliver and her dates, 1935 to 2019. The 19's gone off, but I do remember that we lost her in 2019. She's a wonderful poet. If you don't know her, do look her up. I'm sure many of you do know her. See, there again, I'm a bit neat down there, so I'm just going to... My cutting was a bit slapdash. What I'm going to do actually is start there where it's neat. That's not a bad tip. If you see you're a bit neat somewhere, start there. And now I'm a bit neat there. Basically, fiddle about. But just make sure here, before you commit here, that you've left yourself enough elsewhere. I just stopped talking for a minute because I just love the sound of the thread going through the paper and the paper and the cloth. So sorry if you all thought that the microphone had failed. I wonder how many of these I've made in my life of, you know, not only hexagons but the diamonds and things. It's a purely, you know, pointless question because I've no way of knowing. So I'm back to the beginning. Well, I did want to say as well, I don't know if they're watching, but I'm sure many of you know Rachel and Sarah. They're two sisters, Australians, although one of them now I believe lives in Italy. I think that's Rachel, who have both given me, I believe they call it tagging or whatever. They've mentioned me anyway. So kind and generous of YouTubers to do that. So thank you so much to them. And if you don't know their channels, I think they're called... I know Roxy Creations is a common thing. So it might be Roxy Creations by Rachel and Roxy Creations by Sarah. If you don't know them, check them out. And they also show work that their mum's done. I don't think their mum YouTubes herself, but Rachel and Sarah both share. So it's the mum and two daughters. It's really lovely. And there's a lot of stitching, but also I think it's Rachel does a lot of journals as well. You know, sort of, I don't know if they're junk journals, art journals I would want to call them. I'll put links down below to their channels in case you don't know them. Got a knot, got a knot. There you go, he's popped out. And the other thing that I've got coming up, while I'm sitting here doing this repetitive thing that I don't really need to tell you about anymore because I'm sure you've got it, is a log cabin, which will be a series. And I call it wonky log cabins because I don't measure and, you know, cut precisely and all that. I just kind of chuck it on and stitch it together, but in a mindful way. So the introductory video will be coming up soon. First of all, I'm going to... you've had part one of the rust printing and tea dyeing. Well, I haven't uploaded it as I'm sitting here now because I'm sitting here on a Friday for Monday because we've got things going on this weekend. So I'm getting this done today. So what was I saying? Yeah. So the rust printing tea dyeing thing for part one video will already be up by the time you see this. It's going up to today, which is Friday, if that makes any sense at all. And on Wednesday, so you're now watching me on Monday if you're watching, when it goes live. So this Wednesday, day after tomorrow, will be part 2 of the rust dyeing eco printing, because I didn't want to leave a great big long space between the 2 videos. And so then probably on Friday of this week for you will be part 1 of the log cabins, and that will just be a little introductory video. It's not very long for me, I think it's about 20 minutes, just talking about log cabins and why I like them, and showing some of mine. And then following on from that will be a whole series about how I make the blocks, how to put the blocks together, and then various things to make from the blocks. And one of the things will be another journal, because I did the 2 journals, one with a soft cover, the one I'm using here with soft cover and paper pages, and then I did the Borrow inspired journal, the epic videos, which had a tied in cloth signature. If you don't know what a signature is, it's the little folios of pages that you put inside a book. So it had a tied in cloth signature and 2 bound in paper signatures. So I want to do another journal which has got cloth and paper kind of interleaved in some way. So it'll all be bound in, but some of the pages will be paper and some will be cloth. Just thought that would be a nice, what's the word? Tell me the word. A nice combination of textures within one journal. And it would be a much more, oh dear, I'm having real word shortage today, which isn't like me at all. A real journal of serendipity, and then out comes a great big word like that. So as you're instead of working through it and deciding in advance kind of way, you get a paper page, you might write something, or you might do some sticking, or you might do some sketching, or something like that. Or you can stitch, of course you can stitch into paper. And then you get a cloth page, and then you might think, well, I'm going to do some stitching onto that. So I think it will be much more a sort of make it up as you go along kind of journal. Or on cloth as well. You can use Marion on Marion's World, who I keep mentioning, keep making her jump. I don't think she jumps anymore. I think she's used to me talking about her all the time. Uses ink tents. They're kind of paint sticks, I think. It's not something I've used, but it's lovely on cloth. You see some of the effects that she gets, the backgrounds for her beautiful birds and moths she's doing at the moment. So you can do that on your cloth pages. There we go. Oh, the big word in the middle is rheumatism. But yes, it's interesting when you do writing and you cut it up. I suppose it's a kind of like when you cut up the print of a cloth, and then you see other little pieces have more importance because you've separated them from the whole. It's like that with the words. So you've got the whole poem, but then you get little glimpses of words. This is another cloth that came from my neighbour's mum. Did I put a knot? Yes, I did. See, I have no memory of putting that knot. It must have just been purely instinct. Just checking I'm still in shot. Yeah, I seem to remember I must have had a big English paper pieced hexagon project on the go at one point, because I can remember making a quilt and keep finding sand when I took the papers out, because I was on holiday and I'd been apparently sewing lots of them on the beach. And every time I took a paper out, a load of sand came out with it. So I've been talking about the private Facebook group as if you don't all know as if you all know what I'm talking about. Of course, some of you may not. The link will always be below the video. If you follow the link, it should say join. and you'll get asked a question, are you a subscriber? Because I want to keep it only for people, you know, regulars and who are making the projects. And it's really a lovely community of people there already, sharing the work that they make, following not only this weekly thing, but also the, you know, the other tutorials, the stitch journals, the Bis Cornu, there's lots of those going on over there. I'm doing a count. There's a pinned post, and I'm counting, I think, and asking people to comment how many they've made. So just there alone, I think we're well up into the 200s of Bis Cornu in the world. Right. Now, I don't think this little piece is going to get me round another one. I think I'm going to have to get a new bit of thread. So if you fancy that, you know, just follow the link. If the link for some reason doesn't work for you, it may be somehow how you've got your Facebook profile set. I know some people have private Facebook profiles, and I've been into the settings of, you know, of the group to see if it's somehow blocking people, and I can't find anything of that kind. But I have got people in by, you know, one way or another, by friending them or them friending me, and then I'm inviting them. Then so if you have any problems at all, if you can send me a private message on my Facebook profile of Catherine Chambers or my K3M page, I get them both, then I will try and I'll get you in one way or another, you know. I'll smuggle you in somehow. No, you can't sew it onto your cardboard. There we go. And of course, you're more than welcome to just go there and lurk and look at, you know, what everybody else is doing. And I know many people have gone in with the intention of doing that, and then at one point they've put up a picture because they've seen how lovely and supportive everybody is. Because I love reading your comments here on YouTube. It's, you know, it's really nice, and I'm starting to recognise regulars, people's names, and having little bits of chat with people where I can, getting to know people more. But of course, the big advantage on Facebook is that we can put photographs. There's a loose thread in there, but I'm just going to leave it because it won't come out. And also, although here on YouTube everybody can comment on everybody's comments, because they just come up in a certain order, it's not really cohesive, you know. It's quite difficult for everybody to all chat together, all 25,001 counting me. I just can't believe that. You wait till I tell my husband. I just said to somebody on our Facebook group, they were talking about my lovely long videos, quote unquote, that when I made the first proper video, not the flip throughs, but, you know, the first sort of, when I was planning my tutorials, I made that introduction to slow stitch video where I talked about slow stitch as a concept and then said what I was planning to do, you know, the meditation scrolls, the rice bags, the pincushion, the journals, and so on. That video, if you've seen it. I think it was 18 minutes long. And I showed it to my husband, who's been very supportive and lovely. And he was only trying to be helpful. He wasn't remotely being mean. But he said, well, nobody's going to watch that for 18 minutes. So I said, I defended myself because, you know, I'd been, oh dear. Well, am I going to leave that? I think I can get that out. We'll see. Because I watch other people, like I said, on YouTube, Marion, and now I'm going to have to try and get that back in again. Marion and Rachel and Sarah and so on, and other people. And I know that there are long videos like that, and I know that people, you know, we do like to watch them. But he watches reels and things like that, you know, or songs of bands that he likes from the Dark Ages, well, the 1970s, which, you know, so his attention span is not, it's not in the same ballpark. So that was his frame of reference anyway. But it does make me laugh every time I read a comment of somebody saying, oh, I like the long videos, make them longer when they're an hour long. That he said to me that 18 minutes was too long, and no one's going to listen to me for 18 minutes. And I'm not, well, I am a bit, no. The infuriating thing about my husband is he is often right. He doesn't very often say things that are wrong. Because he's, you know, a very smart man, intelligent man, and also he doesn't really say things unless he virtually knows it to be true. So because of that, he's not often wrong. So when he is wrong, after 20 years of being together, when he is wrong, I am a bit, you made a mistake. Am I awful? No, of course I'm not. Okay, this is my last one. Oops. Get that out because that doesn't need to be in there. There's another poem by Mary Oliver called How I Go to the Woods, which I also love. You should look that up. It's about going to the woods on your own, quietly, you know, to be with nature and so on. And I love that as well. But I went yesterday to the woods, that's why I'm telling you about that poem, with my friend who lives over the road here. And we weren't doing it in the Mary Oliver kind of way. We were chattering and, you know, because it was such a lovely day yesterday. The sun came out. I went out in just a jumper or sweater, if you're American, with, you know, no coat or anything. And just a jumper, a skirt, and my wellies, because it's still very, very wet down there in the valley. And we went round our whole woods. There's a top part of our woods this side of the valley, and that's where I walk round twice a day because my old dog Sirius, going down to the valley and up's very steep, and especially now where it's so muddy it's very slippery, and he's a bit arthritic in his hips, so I don't like to take him down there. So because I walk twice a day here the top, and it's been such awful weather, I haven't really gone down out. Stab myself. I haven't really gone down into the deep valley and up the other side. And so we went yesterday because it was lovely weather, just with me and Evelyn and her little dog, who's a border collie called Gizmo, talking of gremlins, and Stella, of course. Fred didn't come. I did wonder if he would come because he loves Gizmo. But he wasn't around. He was probably sleeping somewhere in the sun. And there and the signs of spring already. There's a little part in the woods that is an old track, and I don't walk there because it's absolutely carpeted with primroses, and they're already buds. So hopefully at one point I shall do some videos in the woods, just to show you. Right, that's my last one done. So now I need to put them together, and I'm going to use the same thread to piece them, looking at the time. We're up to 40 minutes, so there might be some editing going on. Don't all shout at me. Like I said, I have to get it uploaded. So I have to have a look how I want to lay them out. Again, I'm making choices, but we're allowed to this week. We have permission. I think that is, you know, good enough. So I'm going to whip stitch them together. Now, so that's my scent. This is called Grandmother's Flower Garden or Granny's Flower Garden. This, and then you would put cream or a plain colour around the edge, and you'd make lots of these. And then like this is what this is. See, so you make these little rosettes with a centre and 6 around the edge, and then you put all these Fred hair, all these cream ones in between. But I'm just going to make one little rosette. So I'm going to start by taking this one. So I want to turn that to get that coming into there, you know, and put them right sides together. I'll hold it up and check it's focused. and then I've got a knot. Yes, I have. And then you do not, well, in general, when you're making them properly, you don't want to sew through the paper because you want to get the paper out. We're not taking the paper out, so it's not that critical. So I've stopped there with my knot, and now I like to sew that end down as I go along. So I'm just going along about 1/8 of an inch. And this is overcast stitch or whip stitch. Do you see how I've pulled that little tail down? That's just how I like to do it. So I'm coming through straight, so I'm going along a bit on the back, my 1/8 of an inch, but I'm coming through straight. I'm not coming through under an angle. When you're doing overcast stitch, the straighter the stitch, the smaller it'll be, because it takes less thread, and I think it's also sturdier. If you find that you are getting the papers, you can just kind of with your finger and thumb push the cloth slightly up off the paper. Get under tail, so I just keep that tail under all the way along. Just keeps it neat. Right to the other end, the other point. And I like to take another stitch in the corner on the same point and then open it up. And we had it like that, and the thread is here. So now this one has to be attached here. Now I'm going to go do one of two things. You could go up to the outside. Yes, I'm going to do that. You could go up to the outside and then you have to break your thread off and come back and go this way. Or you could go this way. Some people join them all round the middles. You know, they go right round the middle and then they go back and do the sides. It doesn't really matter. So I lay it how I want it to be, and then I'm going to do that so those two are right sides together. And then fiddle about with them so they match up. Like that. And then I'm going back into the back of the furthest one, which is the new one that I'm attaching, and pulling that quite tight, not not super tight, and then I take another stitch on the top as well. I'm using here a toning thread for that sort of authentic old-fashioned look, but I have made them with using a black thread even, so that to honour the stitching. That's the idea between doing that. So you use a really dark thread, and one day I'll show you the quilt I made from my dad's hankies, which is paper pieced. And there I've used very dark stitching, red stitching, navy blue and whatever, and the quilt's largely blue and I won't say white because it's more, tea-dyed white, walnut dyed I think mostly. I'll show you that one day. But there, the stitching is deliberately done in dark thread, so it's really visible. So whoops, don't do that. So I've come up to the edge, and again because I'm going to cut my thread, I'm going to do 3 stitches on the spot probably. And then I'm just going to run my end just into the seam a little bit like that. And then cut it off. And open it back up, put it back down how it's supposed to be. Make another knot. So now I need to do this, join this up. So I'm just going to fold that. And I'm being a bit careful not to put a big crease in my paper there. I'm just making sure this is together and that's more of a bend than a fold. And I'm going to come right in that corner again. And I've got my little tail. Take another stitch on more or less the same spot. And then away I go again, sewing my tail down as I go. Okay, I did stop recording because it was getting very, very long. So I've joined them all except for these last two bits, and so I'm just going to do that now. So I'm going to start here in this corner and make this seam and then that seam to finish off. So it's just the same thing as before, you just bend rather than really put a proper fold in. And up you come from the back. I just wanted to say as well, I checked out the book, the V&A book, the book to celebrate the exhibition in 2010, which is called Quilts 1700 to 2010, Hidden Histories and Untold Stories, published by V&A Publishing. It is still available. I checked on Amazon in the UK, the US and Australia. And France, so therefore I'm assuming Europe-wide. That's maybe not a good assumption, but anyway. And it's in paperback as well. For some reason the paperback seemed to be very expensive. I paid £35 for that. That's the cover price. So what's that in euros? Euros and dollars are pretty much the same at the moment. I think that's somewhere around the 40 euro dollar mark, something like that. But it was like 100 and something. But I did also see that the hardback was cheaper, bizarrely, but also that there are second-hand copies available. So on eBay or places like Abe Books, or there's another site, I think it's called We Buy Books or something. So if you Google the title of the book, hopefully if you would like a copy, you can find one somewhere that doesn't require you to, take out a mortgage. And the other thing I wanted to say as well, earlier when I was talking about papers being left in and everything, what I've learned and what I've read in the book there, where they talk about conserving and restoring textiles generally, but in particular what's called the pomegranate coverlet, which had papers in it still. It came into their possession, there being the V&A, and when they conserve and restore, it's important, obviously, that they don't want to make it new again. They want to keep the history of it. And it was very interesting how they talked about how they found out whether repairs that had been made were original repairs that had been made, back in the day kind of thing, and how they decided which repairs to keep and which to take away, respecting the piece itself. And then how they then repaired it just so it would hold together, but so as not to destroy. I just find that whole thing, I think if I could go back in time and have my time over again, textile conservation maybe would have been something I would have been really interested by. Okay, so I'm out to the end. And also talking about papers being left in for warmth, there are even pieces, coverlets, that have been found where the template papers are left in, and also more layers of, like newspaper for example, have been put in deliberately, not stitched in but put in, and then with maybe a lining over the top for warmth. Because of course before the Industrial Revolution in the mid-19th century, paper was all handmade, so obviously very expensive and precious. So it was used carefully. Yeah, that's all part of the history that I love. And there's also speculation that some of the pieces that don't have the papers left in, the papers have just washed away as the quilt's been washed or used or worn away. So maybe it was, the default was to leave the papers in, and if there aren't papers in, it's not that they were taken out, it's that they've come out. So there you go. That's about the history of English paper-pieced quilts, as much as I can remember and, not talk here for hours. But you can, if you can't find the book or you don't want to buy the book, I'm sure if you Google history of English paper-pieced quilts, you'll find lots of things online about it to read up on for free. So there's my little thing from the back. And I just love that you just see little words. Another thing you could do, if you have original family letters or whatever, you could photocopy them. If you have the handwriting of your granny or, somebody in your family, you could photocopy it onto slightly sturdy paper and then maybe tea dye it if you wanted to or whatever. Just dip it in tea and let it dry to age it, and then you could use that to make your templates, and then you'd have, you know, family members' handwriting. You can, you know, I'm sure you'll come up with things that I can't even think of. So anyway, that's stitched and done. So it's going in my book. Here is my book. If you don't know how to make this book, there is a tutorial. It's called Stitch Journal with a soft cover. It's a 2-part tutorial. It's in this playlist for this project, and it's also in the tutorials playlist. And the pages are paper, because I'm being asked fairly often, are the pages cloth? No, they're sketchbook paper, and I am stitching to them. So I've already talked about my last week's, and I've got here ready a little bit of linen, because I want to stitch this onto the linen and decide which way round I want it. But I'm going to, I think that way. I think I'm going to stitch it just at its very top edge here, so that you can lift it up and look at the back. I did think about putting it on that way, but since my theme is hidden stories, I think it's nicer if it's hidden. Basically. So I'm going to just stitch that onto there with my same cotton. And I'm just putting it on by eye, roughly in the middle of my bit of crumpled linen. If you don't have crumpled linen, obviously use something that you do have. I'm just going to whip stitch it on, I think. I'm just going in, it doesn't really matter if it shows on the back, but I'm just going into 1 or 2 threads of the linen because it's quite sturdy. And staying as close to the edge of the patch as I can so that it will flip. You know, I don't want to sew it right down there somewhere. And I can feel I'm in the paper here and there, but it doesn't really matter at all. So there we go, that was quick and easy. I'm going to come through to the back. Trim that off in a minute because that's annoying. Finish it off. I'm just in the linen. I'm just doing a couple of back stitches, and I'm going to go through my loop again, and pull it up, and then I'm just going to anchor that with 1 more stitch. Probably, as usual, doing more than is strictly necessary. Excuse me. So now I want to sew that to my page. That's enough. I'm just going to use this still. Oh, I've forgotten them again. Excuse me. You know what I'm getting. Those of you who are regulars, what am I getting? Shout! I can hear you all. Giant paper clip. So I'm just going to plonk it roughly in the middle. I think I'm going to stitch it along the top because that was the selvage of the linen, so that's a nice sturdy edge. Giant paper clip doing its work. Oh, where's my needle? There it is. So I'll have to get it a bit towards me, making sure you can still see. Oh, I didn't cut that tail off. Go away, you're annoying. Right. So, same thing as before, I'm coming through the back of the cloth only to start with. Oops. I'm going to go back ever so slightly and down through the paper, and then come up again. And then with this paper, I'm going to pull my tail slightly so I don't unthread my needle. With this paper, I know that if I'm careful and I just bend it slightly, I can go in and out in one movement, rather than having to stab stitch in and out. And when I come to there, what I'm going to do is lift that up out the way, so the giant paper clip will have to be moved slightly to one side, like that. And then it's going to be slightly awkward for a minute. Whoops. So I can stitch under. Excuse my hand in the way. I can't do it differently. Just making sure, because I know things like that annoy me otherwise, that I'm still roughly parallel to the paper. I'm out the other side. I'll put that back down. And my parallel still close enough. Close enough as makes no difference. A couple more biggish. I think I've said it before, when stitching to paper I use biggish stitches. You make your stitches too close together, you make like a you know, tear along the dotted line type thing, which is not what you want when you want it to stay there. So you turn it round, keep it where you can see, and then I'm going to step stitch through. I'm right up against the spine, so it's a bit tricky. And then I'm going to come back slightly away. Can I? Yeah, I'm in the right spot. Turn it again, going round in circles. And then I'm just going to do a couple of, the best I can, back stitches on the spot. This is not getting a dangle because it's just piecing thread, and also I just want to keep it simple. So no dangles for this, not because I don't love it, because I do. I love it so much I want it to shine in splendid isolation. Right, let's get it back round. There we go. So that's mine. And then when you lift it up, you see all the papers behind, if it stays in shot. Pieces of my poem, or my, you know, Mary's poem that I love. My pencil, and I keep checking the title of the book. I don't know why I can't keep it in my brain. Hidden Histories, Untold Stories. So I'm going to flip that out of the way, and I'm going to write here. Hidden Histories, Untold Stories. Flip, flip. I'm going to sign it at the bottom with my name, which is K3N, and a little kiss. And it is the 29th of January. So this is the last one for January, and January's had 5 weeks in it. 29/01/24. So next time we'll be in February. And there we go. So that was that one. Hidden Histories, Untold Stories. English paper piecing with the papers left in to respect the historical tradition of when they did that through thrift and need. There we go. So that was where are we? Week 5. I hope you enjoyed that, and I very much look forward to hearing about what you've done in the comments and seeing some of you on Instagram and Facebook. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Thank you. Bye bye.